The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development. With a magazine and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives, at The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.
Testing 1, 2. Awesome. How's everyone feeling? Good? Are you feeling like your best selves at the Best You EXPO? Who's been here for 2 days? Awesome. So the rest of you have just come today. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming to my session. You never know whether there'll be 2 people or a full house. So it's so lovely to see so many happy, smiling faces staring back at me. We're in the passion to profit area. So it's a wonderful topic, isn't it? Turning your passion into a profit. And what I thought I would do during this session is share a little bit with you about my own story in entrepreneurship and business. It's not a journey I ever thought that I would go on. And I'm going to share a little bit with you about how I've built a profile in a niche industry. That industry is the wellness industry. And perhaps share a little bit of, the insights and lessons that I've learned and some of the mistakes that I've made too on my journey, and how important it has been for me to build a personal profile. And in the work that I do with clients as a business coach, how I've seen the power of personal profiling and personal branding really take somebody's idea or seed of an idea and turn it into a massively successful business. So I'm going to start with a little bit of the kind of behind the scenes. So as you can see there, I'm a business coach, but primarily I'm the founder of a company called Well-To-Do. And Well-To-Do was born really out of a desire that I had in my heart to do something bigger with my life. You'll have picked up probably from my accent that I'm not from the UK, I'm Australian. And I moved to the UK 4.5 years ago now. And I had no plan really for my time here in the UK. As a lot of Aussies do, I packed my suitcases and decided that I'd go and travel the world. And thankfully, the UK government are very friendly towards Australians, and they gave me a 2-year visa, and they said you can come and live and work here. And so my intention really was to take what I'd learnt from my university study in business and marketing and the experience that I'd had working for 7 years for a manufacturing company in Australia, and come to England and climb the corporate ladder. And I had this ambition to be a successful businesswoman. But really all I ever knew was to work for somebody else's business. And I grew up in a very small country town in Australia, in outback Australia, population 5,000. And I never knew about entrepreneurship. I never knew about this idea of building and scaling a business on your own terms. My assumption had always been that, like my parents, I would work for somebody else and I would build somebody else's business on their terms. And so when I moved to the UK, I got a very rude shock because I realized that I was a little fish in a big sea of opportunity with lots of other very capable, qualified and credible individuals, also all fighting it out to climb this corporate ladder and live that same dream that I had. And so after, I think, probably 12 months in my first job in the UK, I started to get a bit restless, and I felt that inner yearning again to do something more with my life. And maybe that's a feeling that some of you can relate to, that feeling that, there's got to be something more to this. I want to get up and go to my day job and feel full of life. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel like I'm adding some value to the world. And so I started to think about, how I could define my professional life on my own terms. And living in a city like London, I started to become more exposed to this idea of entrepreneurship, of startup life, of seeing other young people taking a seed of an idea and turning it into a business. And really, it started for me with exploring what I was most passionate about. And this idea of wellness sort of started to bubble in my mind. And wellness in Australia is something that fits very naturally into our lifestyle. So are there any other Aussies in the room? No? I'm alone. So Aussies are very naturally outdoorsy. When you picture Australia, you picture sun and outdoors and probably really fit people and very active outdoor lifestyle. We kind of naturally have access to very healthy, plentiful array of types of food. And so living in London, I kind of realized that in order to stay healthy and well, actually it was a lifestyle that I needed to subscribe to. And when you live in a city like London, you're sort of starting to look for your tribe of people who are on your same wavelength. And what I noticed was that a lot of the wellness trends that were very successful in cities like New York and in cities like Sydney, these concepts like boutique fitness studios and juice bars and yoga studios and ideas around healthy eating and healthy snacking were starting to make their way into the UK. And I just observed this sort of interest that was generating, and I started to connect with individuals behind those businesses. And while still working in my full-time job, I made it a bit of a passion project to write about that industry. And so, go back 4 years ago now, I remember sitting at my desk at work and I logged onto WordPress, and it wasn't a website I'd ever used before. And I registered a website, and I registered it as welltodoo.wordpress.com. And I decided, what's next? What's the next step for me? And it was, okay, I need a brand. So I opened up Microsoft Paint, for anyone who remembers that program. And I designed my very first logo. And it was a bit rubbish, it wasn't anything exceptional. It wasn't the type of logo that perhaps a brand agency could have produced for me. But I knew that I just needed to take some action on behalf of my dream. And that dream really was to define my life on my own terms. I looked at my director at the company that I worked for, and I thought, I don't want to be you in 10, 15 years' time. And that idea of climbing the corporate ladder just suddenly lost its appeal to me. And I realized that actually, if there was a price to be paid or a sacrifice to be made, it would be for the sake of building something that I felt really passionate about. So Well-to-Do as a blog then really became a way for me to explore my passion. So I would go to this new boutique fitness studio that had opened, and I would approach them and I would say, I'd like to find out more about your story and I'd like to write about it for my website. And I remember those first few emails, I would sort of say, I'm very new and, we're getting a lot of traction. I think we've had 50 page views this week on the website. And I look back on that time and I realized that actually it was those small steps that built the business that I run today, which I'll share a little bit more with you about as well. But really, it started as a passion, and it started as a side project, and it started with me working on my dream part-time. And I think that's so important because so often that fear of, I'd like to start a business, but I have a full-time job, or I have commitments, and actually we get obsessed by needing to know what the big picture looks like, and needing to know, how will I deal with step 25 instead of actually just taking step 1.
For complimentary resources from my book, my complimentary e-course, The Power of the Question, or recommended reads, go to www.thequestion.com/resources. For more information on my coaching or mentoring, go to www.bernardo-moya.com.
And step 1 for me was to just start that exploratory process. So really behind that was an ambition to find my big business idea. And I know that's a process that a lot of, budding entrepreneurs can relate to, is I've got to find my big idea. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to find this big idea. And actually, with the small steps that I was taking, that idea started to evolve. And so well-to-do started to generate an audience, started to generate interest from other people who were also interested in this really rapidly growing wellness industry, which is now said to be worth $3.7 trillion. Can you believe? But I saw this trend, and you'll have noticed it too. I mean, you go into a Sainsbury's or a Tesco's or a Waitrose now, and the candy bars are all gone, and it's healthy snack food, and it's because there's an overwhelming demand now for individuals who want to be healthy and want to feel well and actually want to be more in control of their health. And so I realized that my passion was the intersection of wellness as a consumer lifestyle choice and entrepreneurship and business. And I wanted to play this active role in helping people to take a passion for wellness and a passion for living well, and whether it be eating healthily or working out or introducing people to meditation or whatever it might be, and turning that into a profitable business. So Well-to-Do really became a platform for industry insight, for trends, for reporting on what is it that makes the consumer so interested in well-being. And the next stage really for me was to figure out how to make money from my business. So at this point, I was still working in my job. It had been 6-7 months of writing content and developing an audience and marketing my brand. But what I realized was missing was something to sell. So turning a passion into a profitable business is a challenging process if you don't have a really clear idea of a product or a service that you're going to offer. And so that exploratory process that I went through over that 7-month period really led me to discover what it is that the opportunity was. And so we launched our first event, and I say we, it was just me. And I put tickets on sale on my website, and I said, I'm going to host this event, and we're going to take 3 really influential entrepreneurs in this industry. And I think I'm really interested about the business of wellness, and surely there are other people out there who are interested in it too. And so I asked the founder of the Deliciously Ella brand, for anybody, does anybody know of the Deliciously Ella brand? This is going back 3 years ago now, when she was very new in her business. And I asked her, would you like to come and speak at my event? I'm not sure how many tickets I'll sell, but I would love to invite you as my guest to come and speak and to share your business story. And thankfully she said yes. And I asked 2 other entrepreneurs, and we set up in a basement event space in central London. And to my shock, but also great joy, 150 people bought tickets. And after 7 months of hoping and wishing that I would find a way to turn this passion that I had into a business, suddenly there was this turning point, and I realized I had something to sell. And it was an exciting time because I realized that I had a business. I had a business that would make money. And it was very shortly after that I quit my job and decided to focus full-time on building my business. And so really where the profile piece plays into this is that the reason that the event ticket sold is because of the relationships that I had built with people in that industry, and the 7 months that I had spent reaching out to literally hundreds of people and asking them what I could do to help them to promote their business to this audience that I was building. How can I understand what it is that your business needs? It was question after question after question. And so what I thought I would do is share with you some of the things that I learned about the power of building a profile that has enabled me to build an audience and a community around my business, and a little bit more about where it is today. I wanted to just share a couple of quotes before I jump into that. I love this one, and it's the second quote sort of says the same thing, but this one says, "Masters today were beginners yesterday, so begin now." And as I said, so often we get caught up in what the business might look like in 5 years' time, or, an obsession of needing to have a really clear plan or direction of how you're going to build your business or career or whatever it is that you're working towards, and forget that actually the most important thing is the step that you take next. The next person you email, the next person you speak to, the next idea that you bring to life in even the most bootstrapped or budgeted way. It's possible for you to experiment with your idea and bring it to life in a way that means something and that allows you to attract feedback, allows you to form relationships and take steps forward. And actually, it's great to have a plan, but plans are always subject to change. And the second one, which comes from the co-founder of Twitter, says, timing, perseverance, and 10 years of trying will eventually make you look like an overnight success. And for anybody who's an avid social media user, I love social media. I think it's brilliant and great for profile building. But so often it feels like everybody's doing the thing that you want to do. Has anyone experienced that? And it's fascinating because when you're obsessed with the thing that you're passionate about, you naturally gravitate to other people that want to do the thing that you want to do. But the downside to that is that suddenly you feel like everyone else is a yoga teacher, or everyone else is a coach, or everyone else is a dentist, or whatever it is that you're passionate about. It's your Instagram feed's full of it, and so is your Facebook feed. And I mean, that has a lot to do with the algorithm. They want you to see things that you enjoy and that you're also passionate about. But the downside is that we often fall into this comparative trap that actually everyone else is doing what I want to do, and they're doing it better as well. So it really does come down to timing and perseverance when building a personal profile. And it's that commitment to your message. It's that commitment to projecting on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis that message that you want to get across, and affirming yourself through the commitment to that message that, that you're a serious player too. And suddenly you're in somebody else's feed, being that person that is compared to as well. So, I mean, there are lots and lots and lots of ways to boost your profile. And in the half hour that I have with you, I'm not going to profess to cover all of those. But what I thought I would share is 5 ways that have worked really well for me in growing a personal profile, specifically in the wellness industry. And that's allowed me to position myself as a leader or a thought leader in this space. So the first there is people, relationships, network. So as I said, my inbox is full of emails from the early days of my business where I would literally reach out and say, hi, I'm Lauren. I want to help you build your business and understand what it is that I can do to help you. And it really is, when building relationships with people in business, about first asking, what can I do to help you? And people, relationships, and network will form the foundation for that. So if you have a niche or an area of focus that your passion sits in, then who is it that you need to know in that particular industry or sector that you need to be connected to? And a great way to do that is, if your area of passion is, a particular sport or a particular industry or a particular market segment, make a list of 20 influential people in that space that either inspire you or that that you could learn from. So often those sorts of people are speaking at events. They are, part of events themselves or part of networks and communities. They might be part of industry groups. Find a way to connect with them, even if it means guessing their email or creating a LinkedIn profile and sending a message through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually a really powerful platform when you're building a business. And find a way to connect with them, whether it's asking if you can buy them a coffee or a more meaningful way of you providing some support to them. Offer your time, offer your resources, offer your skill set in a way that is meaningful and that will add value to them. And really work on building your network. I know networking is not the most comfortable thing for a lot of people, but really practice makes that easier, and practice going and introducing yourself to somebody who you think would be beneficial for you to know in your particular area of passion. And I think the other thing with that is that surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are also building the kind of business that you want to build, or career that you want to build, or platform that you want to build, will bring you up in a way that won't happen when you surround yourself with people who question what you're doing, or want to constantly remind you of the risks involved in what you're doing, or remind you that it's much more sensible to stay in the job that you're in because, you know, that's what you've been doing for the last 5-10 years or whatever it is. The second two is to listen to the needs of your audience. So after the first event that we ever ran, I asked that audience of 150 people, what can I do to help you? What can I do to add more value to where you're at on your entrepreneurial journey in the wellness industry? And the insights that I got from those 150 people set the trajectory of my business to where it is now. And they were things like more events like this, or a different type of event, or a full-day conference, which we went on to produce, or content that is on these topics, or certain products or services that I hadn't thought of, but that they were the best people to tell me what those needs were. And I think that listening to the needs of your audience is what positions you as a thought leader, because you're not telling them what you think they need, you're answering their questions and solving their problems. And that's where it links to building a credible profile. Being somebody who listens and responds is a much more powerful and influential position to be in than being the person who says, I think I know what you want, this is it, and assuming what your audience need. The third is to ask questions. And I've touched on this really in terms of how to build relationships and networks. But instead of constantly talking about what you do, asking questions and asking how you can help in a networking environment is much more powerful and places you in a greater position of influence than perhaps you think. I think so often we feel like we've got 30 seconds to talk about what we do. We've got to get our business card shoved in somebody's face and make the most of an opportunity to talk about ourselves. And actually, you know, if any of you have read the classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's about finding out about the person and putting yourself in a position of influence and power by being able to respond to their needs and understanding who they are, and being able to have the authority that comes with knowing how to better serve your market. And that's really how you create a profile of influence and credibility, being the person who listens. And it's so rare now to be at an event where you're engaging with somebody and feeling like they're really listening to what you're saying. So it's actually quite a unique quality to have now. The fourth there is persist and be consistent. So with things like social media, with things like content creation, whether it's blogging or writing or speaking or posting on Instagram, it really is about consistency. So it really reflects on that quote, 10 years of trying will ultimately make you look like an overnight success. And, I draw on the case study of a Deliciously Ella. She's got over 1 million followers on social media. And the reason is that she has been consistent from day one in the type of content that she produces, in the type of message that she produces. And if you're a product-based business or a service-based business, and it really is your passion, then turn that passion into a desire to create meaningful content that your audience will love to consume. And so ultimately it comes down to consistency of contributing to your audience and contributing in a way that is meaningful and influential on a constant, a daily basis. So if you're trying to grow an Instagram following, if you're trying to grow a Facebook following, if you're not creating content, then people aren't seeing you in a sea of noise. And really that kind of leads into the fifth point there, which is to create meaningful content and share your story. So often we forget that it's really the story behind the business that sells a product or service. And personal branding is a really key part to marketing strategy of any business. In this day and age, because our profiles are so visible online. And I'm sure it's true for you that if you found a product or service that you really like, one of the first things that we want to know is who's behind this brand, who's behind this company, what's their story, why did they launch this product, why did they launch this service? I want to know more about the why. A great book, if you haven't already read it, is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. In fact, there's a TED talk that's brilliant to watch as well. I'm seeing some nodding heads who have watched that. It relates back to that sense of why you do what you do. And that connects so acutely to your personal profile and your personal brand. So for the first sort of 18 months of my business, I really stood behind my brand. I let well-to-do be the brand that people associated with our events and our brilliant content and everything that we were doing. And I would constantly be asked at events, but what's your story? Why did you build this brand? Why are you doing what you're doing? And it's easy to forget that people are curious. People are curious about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And they want to know what motivates you to have impact in the world and to share your passion with the world. So, it's a really great exercise to actually just write down that story, write down and reflect on why you became passionate about that particular subject or that particular business model or that particular product or service, whatever it is that you're looking to monetize or turn into a profitable business, and write your story. That becomes your personal brand. It becomes your core values. It becomes your reference point. It becomes the reason why people invite you to speak at events. It becomes the reason why people ask you to write guest content on their website. It becomes the reason why people send you a LinkedIn message and ask you to connect, because your story in some way has resonated with them and in some way has touched them or in some way inspires them to want to buy your product or service. And really that's why I'm so passionate about working with entrepreneurs to turn a seed of an idea or a personal story or a personal journey that so often comes up in wellness brands. So often it's born out of a personal experience with a health crisis or a personal journey to discovering well-being. And that really is what people want to hear. So as fearful as you are about putting yourself into that public space and sharing your story, it really is what will draw people in to your product or your service or your business in more ways than you realize. So here are 5 things that I stopped doing along my entrepreneurial journey, and I wanted to share them with you today. One of those things was feeling comfortable. So I've talked a lot about finding opportunities to speak and share your story, or to approach a stranger who inspires you and to ask them for advice, or to reach out to a company that is doing something that you know that you could learn from. And those things are really uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable for me to walk up on this stage and stand in front of all of these people and talk about my journey. But as uncomfortable as it is, it allows me to share a message with you. And if you're a passionate person who wants to turn your passion into a profitable business, sometimes you have to do things that are really uncomfortable and learn to sit in that discomfort and realize that it's part of the learning journey that makes you, in your own definition, a success, because you've been able to bring your idea or your concept to life and have impact on people. So I stopped feeling comfortable and I started to put myself into really uncomfortable positions, like reaching out to strangers or emailing somebody to ask them if they would speak at my event, even though maybe they would say no, or, just going headfirst into those situations where you might get rejected or you might even, God forbid, fail. And we are so afraid of failure, aren't we? And yet putting yourself out into a public space and building a personal profile or a personal brand, which is why you came to this session, is going to feel uncomfortable. So actually, if you feel that uncomfortability, embrace it. It's part of the process, and it gets easier and it gets more fun, believe it or not. The second thing there is stop thinking you're going to be successful overnight. So it's okay to launch the business with the crappy logo that you made in Microsoft Paint, or the version of the product that's not quite right, that's not quite perfect, that's not, the end result that you wanted. Because the feedback that you get and the opportunity that you get to build a profile with an audience that grows with you on that journey is far more exciting than putting yourself out there when you're ready and the product or service or website is perfect, and realizing that nobody knows about you yet because you didn't put yourself out there sooner. And I think that when you're building a business, it's so fun to go on a journey with your first customer, and then your second customer, and then your third customer. And, we get to know each other in those early stages of influence where, it's only you three, so, you're not going to judge me if I do something embarrassing or fail. And give yourself permission to actually grow your influence as a beginner and as somebody who, is prepared to take a risk and allow people to join you on the journey as you grow.
For more information on collaborating, partnering, sponsoring, supporting, or speaking at any of our events, or finding out more about our legacy clubs, go to www.thebestyou.co. If you're interested in finding out more about the amazing content we have, please go to www.thebestyou.online and get your 14-day free trial now.
So forget about having to be successful by tomorrow and actually just start doing the thing that you want to do now, even if it risks you looking a little silly along the way. The third there is saying yes to every opportunity. And as far as personal profile building, if you're somebody who wants to speak in events and, write for websites or put your product in new or exciting places, you'll start to gain some momentum in your business and you start to, attract opportunity. And what was really important to me was to remember why I was passionate about that thing to begin with, and what my core values and my core mission were for my business, and that not every opportunity was going to be a yes. Some of those things, whilst they were really exciting and appealing, weren't going to align with me. And that's where you build credibility in your personal brand. So building a brand that is a really true reflection of you requires sometimes that you say no to opportunities that don't fit. And that was something that I definitely learnt along the way. Taking feedback from everyone who'll listen. So especially when you're starting out, it's very tempting to do a lot of talking about your idea, doing a lot of talking about what it is that you want to build, and forget to actually take action. So there are two parts to this. One is don't spend too much time talking and not taking action. And the other part is don't waste time talking to people who are just going to bring down your idea or remind you of all the risks that are involved in you taking that leap of faith and turning your business into turning your idea into a business, and instead spend time talking with people like the people who are here today, who share that vision for personal growth and who also want to build, successful, profitable businesses, and who ultimately have done the thing that you want to do. And they're the most inspiring people really to talk and connect to. And they're the ones who will help to elevate your profile as well. The people who can see that you're serious about what you're building and will ultimately support you and lift your profile up with them because somebody did that for them at some stage as well. And the final one, which, I think I've touched on, is consuming more than you create. So this idea of scrolling continuously and masquerading that as market research or, checking out your competitors is actually what so often gets in the way of us actually taking, action and executing on our ideas. So you can spend months, years, waste all this time looking at what other people are doing or what your competitors are doing and realizing that somebody else got to it before you did. So in terms of, again, profile creation, if it's social media, if it's just putting your product or service out into the market, it's so much about creation, getting first really clear. And my next and final slide kind of covers off this as a really clear 3-step formula that I feel worked wonders for me. And that is that getting really clear on your message and who you are and what your profile represents is the first step. And there are lots of ways that you can get clear on that, and it is refined over time. But the second step really is creation, and that is just putting it out there, putting your writing, your content, whatever it is that you're passionate about, out into the market so that it's subjected to feedback and criticism. And that's the scary part, right? That's the part where you say, okay, I now know what I'm passionate about. I now know what I want to do. And now I have to potentially risk being criticized or ridiculed or whatever that fear is that you have, and evaluating what the worst is that could happen. And then the third piece of that formula really is consistency. So with networking, with building a following, with building a customer base, with building a successful brand, it really is about consistency and forgetting about that obsession with having to have success by tomorrow, and just calculating out your model, calculating out the strategy that you're going to employ, being smart about it, talking to the right people about it, fine-tuning your idea, taking action, and then being consistent and not stopping until you create that business that you always desired to have. So that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Do we have a mic? Awesome. Thanks. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for that. So drilling down specifically into the personal brand side of things, is what process did you follow to really get clear on the quality of the brand, the values, and just what people experience?
For my personal brand, or what to do? So my personal brand, definitely going through a process of evaluating what my values are. So firstly, what am I passionate about? Entrepreneurship and wellness. And I think the key really for me was honing in on that niche. I think that you can have a very broad personal passion, but finding a way to kind of niche that down initially really gives you power to maximize the resources that you have as an individual and to be more specific with how you target your message. So for me to say I'm a business coach and I work with female entrepreneurs in the wellness industry is very specific, right? Like there are lots of industries that I could work with. And in fact, I probably would follow a similar formula if I was working with an entrepreneur in the construction industry. But I really narrowed down what it was that I personally was passionate about and decided to start there. And that's not because I feel that, at some point I might be wanting to branch out from that message. But I think when you're starting out in building a personal profile, it is so important to really find that little key niche area that you can own and that you can hone your messaging. So whether you're writing about that subject or you're speaking about that subject or you're having a conversation with an individual, you can really drill down into something relatable and specific that either resonates with that person or doesn't. And I think what that means with respect to turning that into a profitable business is that you'll find out very quickly whether that person is a potential client for you or not. So if you aren't in wellness and you're not a female founder, I know that I'm not going to sell something to you. And that doesn't make you an irrelevant person for me. It just makes it very clear to me that you're going to be a sales prospect or you're not. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. So much of your talks really resonated today. And I wondered if you had any tips on how to, practical tips on overcoming the fears of being in the spotlight and the public eye when you're building your personal brand.
Yeah, I mean, a really practical way would be to start speaking to a small group of people. So, if you are uncomfortable about being in front of an audience, or you're uncomfortable about being in a public space exposed to lots of people, I would encourage you. And, this is something that I have done as well in terms of developing speaking skills or ability to be vulnerable in sharing what I do, is starting small. And I think it's that idea of embracing just being a beginner and not expecting of yourself to have to come up here and speak to all these people if it's not something that you've done before. I think the sooner that you can embrace that process of starting as a beginner and learning how to excel at something and just committing to that process as a step-by-step process rather than I have to jump fully into something really scary, feels a lot lighter to me. I don't know if it feels that way to you as well.
Thank you.
But finding ways to experiment with approaching your biggest fear in incremental steps rather than like a full-fledged, jump straight in.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering how you feel about how you draw a line between you as a private person and with social media, and then you as a personal brand involved in what you do, your business.
Yeah. Awesome. So it's really simple for me. Am I comfortable sharing this part of myself with an audience of people I don't know? Yes or no. And it's really that straightforward. It's really that black and white. I don't think that it's ever worth sharing something that you feel so vulnerable about that you wouldn't be able to cope with other people knowing about you for the sake of building a brand. I mean, there would be no point to that. And I think you know what you feel comfortable sharing. There are some people on social media that are very vulnerable and very open, and I'm inspired by that, but I know that's not me. And I share what I feel will be helpful for me in propelling my brand forward. So that's why it's so clear, as a business, to identify what your brand values are and what your objectives are. And then when it comes to how your personal brand can support that, really, you only need to share the parts of your personal brand that will ultimately assist you in getting to those bigger business objectives. And that will be different for every individual and for every business and its unique objectives, if that makes sense. But, I mean, if there's an example for you, I'd love to chat to you afterwards. Yeah. Maybe one more question, if there is one. Yeah. Oh, at the back.
Hi there. Just wondering how you would separate your business brand from your personal brand if you're putting out your message through your business brand.
Yeah, it's such a good question. So you may have noticed on my first slide, I actually have a personal website. And I think that's a great idea if you're building a personal brand and you have a business. And the reason that I decided to do that was because there are some parts of my personal brand that I wanted to share that actually weren't that beneficial or didn't actually support the brand values of my business, Well-to-Do. And so I decided that whilst Well-to-Do was a very established and a growing business, I also wanted to have opportunities to do other things outside of that business. And I set up my business in such a way that some point in the future, perhaps Well-to-Do will be a business that I sell or that I exit from or that I take a step back from and I have a team who manage. But I still feel that it's valuable to leverage that business and the opportunities that it creates to enhance my personal brand, which sits over here at laurenarms.co and has the potential to be whatever it is that I want it to be. So I often encourage clients who have a business on social media, who have social media accounts, to have a business account and then a personal account. So in very practical, real terms, if I am speaking at an event like this, then I will post or my social media team will post on the well-to-do business social media accounts, and they will say our founder, Lauren Arms, who's on this account, is speaking at the Best You Festival. And I think that I've made a very practical definition between that business brand and that personal brand, and for very strategic purposes, because I feel it gives me freedom to be whatever I want to be under my personal brand without potentially tarnishing or confusing the customer base of my other company brand. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Thank you so much. If anybody wants to chat to me, I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.